Well, welcome. My name is Keith, and this is Brandon, and we're part of Gospel Community Church, and we've been going through Genesis. We've been teaching through the first couple chapters, and there's a lot about work, and a lot about how man should work, a lot about what God has worked in the creation. But as you all know, everyone that lives today works, or at least should work, and everyone has some kind of work to do. And so we wanted to dig a little more into that topic of work because there's so much to address in it that we can't talk about every aspect of work in one sermon on Sunday morning. So we wanted to address work much more specifically, and we have some questions. But I want to start with just in general, you defined in your sermon, Brandon. You can go check out that sermon on our website if you want to hear it. It's an awesome sermon. I think it was one of the best sermons I've heard on work. I think other people have said that too.
Yeah, I think some people said it was the best, or maybe they said it was the only one they ever heard on work. But
probably the latter.
Yeah, but I feel like that's kind of the same thing. But it's amazing how little we talk about this when the bulk of our life is spent working.
Right.
And the Bible has so much to say about work.
And our culture, and especially the younger people in our culture, are very obsessed with work.
Yeah.
It's almost a badge of honor to be working all
overwork,
the time.
Yeah,
exactly. It's
so staying up all night studying.
Yeah, I'm working. It's like, okay, well, can you manage your time a little better? Anyway, you defined work in that sermon.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great definition. You want to define it again for us?
Yeah, so I said that work is blessing people and glorifying God through the cultivation of the world around us. So it has to do with each other. Right. It has to do with the vertical component of God, but it also has to do with the world around us. So we do that in different ways. Some people, it's intellectual, right? The bulk of the work that you and I do as pastors is
knowledge
intellectual.
Work.
Yeah, it's writing sermons, it's conveying information, it's meeting with people. We don't produce like a tangible good,
right,
but we try to make the world better, cultivate the world through the work that we do by bringing the knowledge of God to people, right? But others do it through physical, tangible ways, right? And every different aspect of that, if it's done to bless people and to glorify God, is a good thing. Right. And it's more than that, it's a meaningful thing, right? We think of good works as being some sort of strictly spiritual thing that we do, but the good works that God's prepared us for in Ephesians 2:10, right, include the work that we do, right? The 8 hours a day or whatever it is that we spend at our workplace trying to make the world better in some small way.
Right. Perfect. So work's a good and glorious thing. God has given it to us to work. It's supposed to bless others, supposed to cultivate, it's supposed to bring order. Like, how does that actually work out, though, tangibly in individual careers, like law enforcement or something like that?
Yeah. So we can look at specifics, and we can actually see the character of God reflected in these careers if we look at it accurately, right? So law enforcement is a super important career, and really law enforcement, when it's done best, is taking the law and applying it to situations where chaos could reign or lawlessness could reign, right? It's coming into to the streets or into someone's home or whatever to apply the law in a righteous way. That's good law enforcement, right? And God's all about that, right? Because God creates laws, and then he wants them to be obeyed. And he himself has certain punishments for lawlessness.
Right.
So law enforcement should be done to the glory of God and for the betterment of others. And I've seen it done that way many times.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, stocks are really popular these days, and investment has been through the roof. What about some kind of an investor? How could an investor work within that definition of work to the glory of God?
Yeah. Investment, often we just put our money in a place we don't think about it.
Right.
But investment, what it really is, and when it's done well, is it's taking your resources and investing them, right? Giving them to somebody else, entrusting that person with them in order that they can grow a business, in order that they could do something that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise, right? And to bless the world through your resources. So instead of just putting your resources somewhere away and sitting on them under your mattress or whatever, it's to take them and to give them back to others to benefit yourself, but also to benefit them, right? I mean, we should be thoughtful about how we invest our money because we want to invest in businesses that will make the world better.
And what about...
And by the way, that's what God does in the garden, right? He places Adam there. He gives to him this space. He entrusts him with it in order that Adam can bring something good out of it.
Right, 100%. And what about something like a more mundane job? You know, working at Panda Express or garbage truck guy or packaging at Amazon, like loading boxes up and shipping them out. What about those more lowly, or I wouldn't say lowly, or those more mundane tasks of work?
Yeah, in the eyes of our world, maybe
Right.
more mundane, but like
Right.
a garbage man, like the old saying is cleanliness is next to godliness, and there's a sense in which that's true, I guess. Like God cares about a clean, orderly world, so somebody who's taking care of those things is incredibly valuable, right? We would see it as maybe not as important, or maybe it's not as prestigious as other jobs, but it is very important.
Right, essential.
Or someone who's delivering things to others, right? Making sure people get their needs met. All these things that we just take for granted, the infrastructure that we have as a community, it's because people have worked hard to build that.
Right.
So we're blessed by them.
So every job that's not sinful can glorify God, and there is ways to be blessing. Right?
Yeah, and that's
Every
what we see in
job.
Genesis 1 and 2 is that God creates man with the intent that will work, that we have a purpose, and that we're going to bless the world and cultivate the world around us to subdue it and to bring the blessing of God to the whole world.
Right.
And again, I mean, that happens even through, it happens maybe primarily through parenting, right? Parenting is one of
100%.
those work areas that our world also takes for granted or dismisses. So if
Right.
you're a stay-at-home mom, which I know you're not, but if you're a stay-at-home mom, that's maybe less valued in the eyes of the world. But what could be better than taking the raw materials of a child and bringing that into cultivation,
Right.
into order, and into someone who can also bring blessing to the world?
I did appreciate how in your sermon you did list, being a mother as part of careers, right?
Yeah.
So because it totally is.
Yeah, and it's
not
essential.
valued by our culture at all.
Yeah, when you have a wife with a newborn baby, as we do, you see just how much work is involved in
crazy.
parenting. It's insane, right? And it shifts over time, but it's always a ton of work.
So an idea you hear this a lot in our culture. It's very pervasive in at least in California it is. I'm sure everywhere in the U.S., any Western culture, is this negativity towards the person that has much. This negativity towards someone who has a lot of money, someone who's accrued wealth, and that has, in any sense, power associated with wealth. That's a negative thing in today's culture. Now, my question is it bad for us to want to make money to actually have material wealth? Is that a bad thing? Because I've heard it in Christian culture too. The aversion of having anything of value. I mean, Shane Claiborne's a big guy. Makes his own
Make your own
clothes.
clothes. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it's like
I remember reading him like 10 years back
Yeah,
or something. And you're like, okay.
But is it bad? Is it bad to have money or want to have money as a Christian?
Yeah. So, and this is something I was wondering if people might be thinking based on the sermon, because I focus so much that one part on work is about love. It's not just, you shouldn't pick a career simply because of the benefits and the high-paying salary, and you can do as little work as whatever, right? So it's not about money because God provides for our needs. So when we honor Him, He has amazing ways of making sure we get what we need. But I thought people could be thinking, well, does that mean aiming to make a lot of money is bad? And no, I don't see that in the Scripture at all. Making a lot of money when it's done in the right way, right? Because there are ways to make money that are bad, but I'm just saying you're not doing it the right way. It's essentially adding a massive amount of value to the lives of others.
Right.
I want to add so much value to people's lives that they will pay me top dollar to do that, right? So I want to have some specialized service or invent something that's never been invented before, right? And improve millions of lives. Like those things are good to aim for. So when it's done right, it's done well. Absolutely,
Right.
It's a good thing to try to be productive and to bless others to that degree, and to also receive money. Now you can do that in greed,
Right.
You can do that for yourself. You can do it because you want control or power or comfort from that money, and therefore it'll be sinful. Right? I think of 1 Timothy 6:10, which warns is probably the most misquoted verse in Scripture. Right? Is it says the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. So not that money is the root of all kinds of evils, but the love of money
Right.
is the root of all kinds of evils. It says it is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. So there's a danger to loving money, to depending on it, to thinking that's going to give you satisfaction.
Right.
But it's a good thing to want to earn money to provide for your family, to bless your community, right? To be able to give more, to help in different ways. And that for some people is the primary way God has gifted them.
Right.
Is through the gift of being able to give, right? Being able to give gifts.
Yeah, it's not sinful to be a good steward, which, I mean, I think that is a main doctrine of the culture in the world right now, is that if you have succeeded in being a good steward and you've accrued money, therefore somehow you're evil.
Yeah.
It's not true. It's not true.
And I think it's important, like John Piper said this a long time ago, so it's kind of outdated, especially for us in Silicon Valley, where a 6-figure salary is like, you're just above the poverty level in the Bay Area. But he used to say a 6-figure salary doesn't have to result in a 6-figure lifestyle.
Right.
So in other words, just because you make X amount of dollars doesn't mean you have to spend all of it on your own comfort and satisfaction. And that is it's very biblical to say, I'm going to go without in certain ways so I can take care of the poor, so I can fund ministry, so I can do good deeds through my giving.
Right.
So that's one way we fight the love of money as well.
Right. And yeah, obviously, if you just have a pile of gold and you're laying on it like a dragon, like that's
like Scrooge McDuck.
That's obviously not a good thing. But yeah, that's not what we're talking about. So, okay, so money is in and of itself not bad. Just like most things in life, it can be sinful if you love that thing more than God and trusting in Him. If you're using it for your own personal gain, money bad, right? But by and large, money is a blessing from God and it can be used for His glory and for the blessing of others around us.
Yeah, money's neutral. It's how we respond to it. It's what value we place on it in our hearts, and it's how we utilize it for God's purposes, right?
It's a heart condition of man.
Yeah.
That was good. Yeah. So, during this last season of COVID-19, there's been a lot of more dependency on the government for welfare. A lot of us have received stimulus checks. Even our church has received money from the government, right?
Yeah.
So is it bad to receive welfare, unemployment money from the government in general? This free kind of money. I think this is just, something we should be thinking through as Christians when it comes to, being supported by the government, being, recipients of that kind of income.
Yeah. No, I think there's a danger to it. Mm-hmm. Just like there's a danger to wanting to earn a lot of money, right? So you have to be mindful of that. Most people in our culture today would understand that there's a danger of greed when it comes to wanting a lot of money, right? So we'd see Jeff Bezos and we'd say, oh, he's greedy, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know him personally, but that's what people would say of him. Right. They would assume that of him. We don't assume the same thing of somebody receiving money from the government, but there's the same danger there, which is it's a dangerous thing to be receiving money and not working, right?
Exactly.
Because it does something to, your view of work and to your view of yourself. Work is a blessing in and of itself, right? So it's not wrong to receive money from the government. Sometimes it's necessary. We have to feed our families. And sometimes, in this instance, if you're a restaurant owner, the government might have caused you to not make any money because they shut down your business. So that was their decision. So they have to make up for that. But we need to be careful that we don't just depend on that and get comfortable with that. So I had in mind actually a conversation I had with a friend where he was saying, someone that he's close to, that they got let go from their job back in March or April of last year, and they haven't been looking for a job ever since. And they not only that, but they don't actually go out much. They don't do much. They don't go out and get in nature. They just sit at home. And he was expressing concern for that. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah. So that's a danger if you say, well, I might be making more money on unemployment than I was before. Which many are. Yeah. And so therefore I'm not going to work. Or I'm not going to use my time and my gifting to benefit others while I'm on unemployment or anything like that. Well, that's a dangerous place to be.
That's
right?
sinful. Yeah.
That's sinful, yeah. And I thought about, 1 Thessalonians 3:10, where Paul says, when we were with you, we gave you this command, if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat.
Right.
And this is an interesting verse because it's often used to kind of promote like a conservative view of economics, right? You work hard, you do. Not everyone can work in the same way.
Right.
But really, it's not just about economics. It's about the dignity and blessing that work is.
Right.
So if you're going to enable bad behavior from someone who can be working or who should be working, who's not working, then you're actually harming that person in the long run.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this is not someone who's just like, hey, in between stuff, I need help to help me up. That's great. But this is someone who's getting comfortable and saying, I'm never going to work, right? I'm just going to sit around and you got to feed me. No.
I think a great personal example for me, I'll just use myself as an example with welfare and the government. Right now, Molly and I, we've received, stimulus support, for our kids, and we're applying for WIC and stuff like that, California, to get food aid and food help. I think it's, we could use the help right now with food and stuff like that. Just helps us out with our daily living in life. Makes life easier, and it's blessed, so we can be a blessing to others, invite people over to our house and bless them, with meals and stuff like that. So I think that kind of receiving of welfare is good, and it's honoring. But me personally, when I was in my early 20s, I went on food stamps because it was the easiest thing to do when I was gallivanting around, traveling and stuff. And the government was paying me, $300 a month on a debit card to buy food, and I was perfectly capable of working on my own. I was perfectly capable of providing for myself. But because of my sinful attitude towards work, I just chose not to, because it was easier to accept the welfare free. So that would be an example of good welfare use and bad welfare use, just for me personally.
This is pre-Christian, Keith.
Yeah, so it was definitely pre-Christian. Yes.
Like, sweet, you pay me not to work.
Yeah,
great.
Why not?
I'll take that. Yeah. That's not helpful for somebody.
It's subverting God's plan for work in the life of human beings, right? So.
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot the Bible has to say about this, the importance of working, right, of doing good deeds through our work. And so that's what we're talking about, and that's why I wanted to make this video to kind of follow up on that, and the sermon this last week, because work is such a powerful thing, right? It shapes identity, it blesses those around us, and to be robbed of that is a tragic thing.
Right. I think in our culture, there's a lot of weight as well placed on doing we're even talking about it. You were even talking about in your sermon, do something that's glorifying to God, that hits all these boxes pretty much. What happens if you don't know what to do? What happens if you don't know what career path to choose or what job to actually, do yourself? What's the next steps? What do you actually do if you don't know what to do?
Yeah, just start small. Start small. Start with whatever's in front of you, right? What is a way you can make your home better, your church community better?
As Jordan Peterson, clean your room, right?
Yes, clean your room. I think it's just great, helpful advice, right? Do something that can improve the world around you in a small way, and trust that God's going to use your work, right? I mean, not all of us are called to the same things, and you can look at others and think that their work is more important than yours, but God says there's dignity in all kinds of work. So I think of Ecclesiastes 9, whatever your hand finds to do with all your might. Right? Work at what's in front of you. Or Jesus talks a lot about how whoever's faithful with little will be entrusted with much.
Right.
And I think that's a promise.
Yeah.
Be faithful with the little that you have, the little resources you have or time you have, whatever skill, and God will increase that and open up opportunities for you. And I've never seen that where someone is faithful in little and 10 years later, God hasn't expanded their ministry or their impact or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Amen. And let's never forget that at the root of all of our work, whether we're law enforcement, we're an investor, or we're working at Panda Express, whatever career we find ourselves, we're always working to the glory of God and resting in Him, right?
Yeah.
It's, working well is something we need to strive for as Christians, but working perfectly is something that only Jesus Christ has done in His, death and resurrection, And so we rest in that, in His work ultimately as a Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the one, and that's why, just thinking about 1 Corinthians 15:58, therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain.
In the Lord, right?
Yeah, and that's in the context of the resurrection chapter, right? Jesus has died. He's paid the price for us. He's come back to life to show us the kind of life we're going to have someday. Therefore, his conclusion to that whole chapter is, therefore, the work that you do has a lasting impact.
Yeah, amen. Yeah.
So it changes the thing we do 8 hours a day or whatever, right?
Yeah. So work hard for the glory of God and rest well in Him too. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.